back in the day, to be human was, and you pulled out a little pot in the middle of the night, and you took a dump in that, and then took it out later in the morning and buried it.
Or they just go outside in the middle of the night.
It's way too cold. Can you imagine going out to the outhouse when it's snowing? No, they just had the little pots.
So then it's stinky, or do they all live?
Yeah, it's just stinky. You're just like smelling it. My wife took another turd in the middle of the night. Hey, what's happening, you guys? And welcome back to the Proclivity Podcast. It is a Tuesday, best day that I've ever lived. Emily, how about you?
I have a lot to be grateful for.
Emily woke up with a headache, a splitting headache. Let's put it that way. You guys, one thing to consider, you guys may have heard of us like, oh, best day ever, best day ever. That doesn't mean that we don't suffer or we go through trying times or we're emotionally high or emotionally low. What it is saying is that we're making a decision and a choice to control what we can control. And that's what makes the best day ever, is being able to make sure that we empower ourselves with the appropriate language, food, rest, nutrition, movement, to bring us to the best day that we can in the situation and scenario that we're in. There is a difference between a problem and an opportunity. When I say I have a problem with my sleep, this is going to focus on all the things that are going wrong. When I shift it and I go, I have an opportunity with my sleep too, now I'm going to start seeking for answers. And so I just wanted to lead that in because today, what we're going to be talking about is the trauma triangle, particularly about the trauma triangle within your interpersonal relationship. Husband, wife, friends, business owners, people that you share a lot of time with and you are interconnected to. We can get trapped in a trauma triangle where we constantly see everything as a problem and we don't know how to get out of it. So if you are in a relationship right now with any human on this planet, this is going to be a podcast that you are going to want to tune in and spend some time here, because we're going to help walk you through, give you tangible tools how to recognize how you're creating trauma. Yes, you who's listening, you're the one creating trauma in your relationship. And Emily likes to say trauma and drama triangle because there is drama that is happening, which is creating the trauma in your triangle. And we're going to give you tangible tools to understand it and how to get out of it. And this is something that Emily and I have recently discovered, and something in which we recognize in our business partnership. Hey, where are we playing parts in the trauma triangle, just in a business standpoint? So we're going to dive in. This is going to be a very powerful podcast for you guys. So let's get started. Emily, shall we?
We shall.
Cool. So I introduced the trauma triangle to you just last week. Mm-hmm. And just from your standpoint, was it helpful? Was it not helpful? What, you sat on it a little bit here. What are you feeling with this?
Yeah. Well, first, I did think it was called the drama triangle for a whole week, which I actually like. Cool. So I'm going to keep calling it that.
Go for it.
Yeah, I found it extremely helpful because it brought a lot of awareness to my tendencies in times of conflict. I often feel stuck, and as a recovering people pleaser, it brought a lot of light to like, oh, this is like the pit I tend to fall into, or like the little spot that I tend to go into as a reoccurring habit for myself. And so it brought a lot of awareness to me. So I find it very helpful.
Yeah, and you made a really good, I'm glad you used that word pit, because a lot of times in relationships, we can feel like we're stuck in a pit where we're like, I tried to do this thing and then I'm back in this mud. Mm-hmm. And then I thought, like, if I did these little things, that it would be different, and I'm back in the mud. And we start getting really frustrated and start creating a lot of dysfunction in relationships, whether that's with your parents, whether that's with your husband or wife, or even with your business partner, when we continue to fall back into that pit or mud, it's going to create dysfunction. It's going to create animosity. It's going to create frustration, all these types of emotions and feelings that could eventually lead to resentment and could really break down a relationship. So, what is the trauma triangle? This was something that was introduced by Dr. Stephen Cartman, and it illustrates the dysfunctional dynamics often presented in relationships. And so there's 3 roles in a trauma triangle or drama triangle, as Emily wants to keep it. So I want you to imagine, and if you're listening right now and you have a pen and a piece of paper, I want you to draw a triangle. And then at each point of the triangle, we're going to give you some characteristics. So, Emily, give us the 3 characteristics. You don't have to explain them quite yet, but what are the 3 characteristics of the trauma triangle?
Yeah. So there's the victim. That's one point. The next point, there's the rescuer. And the third one's the persecutor.
And when it comes to these roles, how do they play in with each other?
Yeah, so they're contributing to a cycle of dysfunction and conflict. So each perspective uses a different tactic, but ultimately, when you look at them all, they're all avoiding responsibility in one way or another. And there's no one perspective that's better than the other. They all perpetuate disempowerment.
So looking at that, as you guys hear that, and you're going like, wait, avoiding responsibility, wait, how does a victim avoid responsibility? Oh, that's super easy, right? They're not taking responsible for themselves. But what about the rescuer? What about the persecutor? What does that look like? Know that at any point, guys, you are going to be in one of those roles, and those roles can shift. And it's going from one place of disempowerment to another. So you may feel like, oh, if I move from rescuer to or victim to rescuer, I will feel more empowered. But actually, we end up in a little bit of disempowerment there as well. Mm-hmm. So let's explain each role so you guys have a good grasp here. So let's first dive into the victim. Emily, how would you explain, because I talked to you about this last week, how would you explain the victim in your own words?
Yeah, the victim is feeling complete powerlessness, feeling stuck, feeling like everyone is out to get you. And that's like taking no responsibility at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the victim is going to feel, from what I see, and that's a beautiful explanation. The victim is the person that feels that they have no power, no control. Things are happening to them, mm-hmm. not for them. And we end up in this really reserved role. And a victim can feel hurt and alone, scared, afraid in that victim role. Now there's the second part or characteristic, which is the rescuer. And the rescuer at times wants to come in and save who?
Save the victim.
Okay, so if we're in a relationship, you guys, you might find yourself wanting to be the rescuer. So what is the rescuer in your words, Emily?
The rescuer is, for me me personally, is wanting to avoid conflict, wanting to appease others, right? Thinking of other people. And so this is something like I fall into often. So I'm trying to avoid the conflict and rescue someone in a sense of like, let me figure this out, or let me tend to you or others, so it's not a big deal.
Absolutely. I see it as a very similar way. The rescuer is coming in to be able to solve the problem in the way that they feel is the best way to be solved. So there's a difference between enabling someone as a rescuer and disabling someone as a rescuer. Mm-hmm. It's like that old passage, right? If you give a man a fish, he eats for one day. But if you teach them how to fish, they can eat for a lifetime. And as a rescuer, we come in quite often trying to fix problems that isn't our area to fix
Mm-hmm.
or isn't our weight to carry. Yet maybe throughout our lifetime, we watched our mom or our dad come in and constantly rescue. And so we saw empowerment in rescuing. Oh, wow. People look at me and I feel strong. I feel wanted. I feel needed. But I'm actually taking people down my path of what I believe I actually need because I have this experience and it was this way for me. So I'm actually going to steer you onto my path by coming in and saying, oh, no, no, we're going to do this certain way. Or don't worry, I'll pay for it. Or I'll help you even with food. I'll do all your food and food prep for you because that worked for me. But I'm disempowering someone from being able to make their own choice, own decision as a rescuer. And then the last one is the persecutor. Now, the persecutor, and again, I'm going to remind you guys, you're going to shift here in this triangle. You're going to move around in this triangle. And so the persecutor is somebody who's going to take a stance, who's going to be critical, who may even blame the other person, that it's not within their confines or their lane. So a persecutor may be somebody who is angry, frustrated. They might belittle or be controlling and manipulating of a situation because they want it to end up their way. So instead of like a rescuer who comes in and says, here, let me just help and do everything, a persecutor is like, nope, I don't like that. You stop it right now. And this is how we're going to do it. And so being able to recognize, guys, in your relationship, which one are you? And here's the key part is that we are going to naturally come in as a certain character in the drama slash trauma triangle. So we might have a tendency to come in as the victim, or we might have a tendency to come in as the rescuer, or maybe we come and have a tendency to come in as a persecutor. So, Emily, where do you feel that you come in as in your relationships, friendships, business, life with your husband?
Yeah. So I, as I mentioned, I tend to come in as a rescuer. And that comes from a place of I tend to get uncomfortable in conflict. So I just want to solve the problem and shut it down. Right. Or
Mm,
I feel like I almost take too much responsibility for others because I don't like the conflict. I just want it to stop. So it's
mm-hmm.
interesting when you were talking about the rescuer before, I can see how it can come from different places of like, well, no, I just want it to be done my way. I could see that being true for some people. That's not it for me. It's actually, I just want to avoid conflict.
Yeah, I understandably so. And let me ask you this, Emily, did you grow up with uh, big emotions or persecutors or tense moments in the home?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Cool. So you learned to be able to keep the peace by doing what?
By avoiding conflict.
So Emily is going to have a tendency to come in as the rescuer to go, man, I don't like I feel unsafe in this role when there's intensity. So I'm going to do everything that I can to dismantle this. So I'll take care of dinner, or I'll shift my ways, or no, I'll go out of my way and drive across town, or no, don't worry, I'll take care of it. Oh, you're tired? I'll take care of this, or that. Does that sound familiar?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I would agree that is for myself that I tend to come in as the rescuer as well. And it's quite interesting because I was talking to my dad about this the other day, and he was talking about business and his business partner, and I was listening to him and He's doing all this like additional work, and he's moving around his schedule, and he's ending up constantly coming in and rescuing his business partner. And I was sitting there going like, oh shoot, I saw where I'm getting this from, because he would also do it with my mom, and he's also done it with all the different jobs that he's had. He's always been a manager, and he worked at a steakhouse and was a maitre d, and he would constantly answer the call for everyone else. So I saw and learned this. Oh, wait a second. This is where empowerment or strength can come from. Yet, Emily, what's the downside of constantly being the rescuer?
Well, that can lead to resentment. It can lead to not getting what you want and being dissatisfied. For me, it's like I've done it so many times. I'm disconnected from what I actually want and where I want
Mm,
to stand. I don't have boundaries.
mm.
So that's where it affects me personally.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that's a point that I didn't even think about. Yeah, absolutely. If we're constantly answering, it's like, what boundaries do we have? I don't have boundaries because I'm avoiding conflict. If I'm
Mm-hmm.
avoiding conflict, there are no boundaries, because
Mm-hmm.
I just want to be away from the conflict. It's like being in an open field. How far can I get away from this conflict? I don't want boundaries here.
Right.
Whew, man, that's good stuff. For me, it's a strength thing. I come in, I'm the rescuer. I got voted uh, most friendliest my senior year
Huh.
in high school. And my brother would joke around with me. He's like, "Yeah, you were voted most likely to drive across town to pick somebody up in the middle of the night who just went through a traumatic event." Because I did do those kind of things. Oh, I'm coming in, losing sleep, and being a rescuer and saying, "Ah, no, come here." And let's not downplay that there are times to be able to come in and be able to go, "I got you, and I'm going to take care of it." But we have to be curious on why we're doing it. So, with that explanation, and you guys are thinking, okay, all right, the trauma triangle, okay, where am I at in this trauma triangle? Think to yourself where you land, and then think to yourself where you may shift. So, let's give an example, Emily, so that people really understand this. Um, do you have something top of mind in terms of something you may come that you may rescue?
Not top of mind. I can think for a sec.
I can do it as well. You want me to do it?
Yes, go for it.
Okay, great. I'm gonna put the pressure on. When Emily gets the pressure on her, it might take a little while.
Yep.
Um, okay, so let's take an example, coming in as a rescuer, for, let's say, a parent, who's also married, and we'll say this is a wife, and the wife constantly feels like she's taking care of the family. She's always watching the kids, she's cooking the food, and she's not necessarily asking for help. So when the husband's had a really hard day, don't worry, just relax, I'll take care of everything. One time's okay, but when it becomes a pattern, then what do? We start slipping and sliding into the victim mentality, or as the victim. Man, I never have time to myself, and my husband's never there to be able to watch the kids. Or here I am doing food prep once more so that he's fed, and we're end up in this victim role. Well, if you stay there long enough, where are you going to eventually slide to?
If
The
you're in the victim,
persecutor.
and then yes. Mm-hmm.
We're going to slide to the persecutor, because we're going to get to a point where we feel pissed.
Mm-hmm.
No, this is over. You're taking care of the kids. You're going to make your own dang meals. I am taking a break. I'm over this. But all three in that scenario is disempowered.
Mm-hmm.
I'm disempowered because I feel like I have no way out as the rescuer. I have to answer the call every time. When I'm in the victim role, I feel disempowered because I feel hopeless and helpless. And no one's going to help me. And then when I'm in the persecutor role, I'm actually disempowered because I'm trying to change the external world around me, not the internal world within me. And so this can be disempowered because guess what? Your husband would be like, no, I'm not going to make any of the dinner. Or, yeah, I'll wash the kids, but I'm not doing this. And what is going to happen there? If it doesn't fit within your firm uh, confines, you, what are you going to do now? So all three can be disempowering. So with that said, you guys might be thinking, well, what the heck? How do we break free from this triangle? And you guys, I behoove you to think of your own personal situation where you feel like you're constantly running in a loop, where you feel like you're trying to get out of this mud and you're back in it. Think about it for yourself, because this is where it's going to become very powerful. So Emily, now let's go over the opposite side, the empowered side of breaking free of the trauma triangle. So let's start first with the victim. What is the opposite of the victim?
The opposite of the victim is the survivor.
And what does the survivor do?
The survivor is going, hey, okay, what can I do?
Right. I start looking into myself as, man, this is a tough situation. I'm constantly making food. I'm constantly with the kids, and I don't feel help from my husband. What can I do here? What is it that I do have? And starting to go from negation to affirmation. We talk about this in the proclivity method. Negation is to focus on what isn't, what wasn't, and what cannot be. These are the nots and the isn't and the haven't and the shouldn't and the can't. I can't believe this. What can you believe then? I don't want this. What do you want then? I shouldn't be. What should you be doing then? When we start shifting from that, we start going from a victim. I can't believe this. I'm completely disempowered. I can't believe my husband's still not helping me. Actually, I can believe my husband's still not helping me because I haven't asked for help. So what I can do is sit down with my husband and say, this is how I'm feeling. I'm having a very hard time, and I'm going to ask you for help, without actually expecting that he will, because that's an internal and external. If he doesn't decide to help, then you are going to have to make a decision on how you will now move forward within this confines of saying, here's what I'm willing to do. Because now what it does is it goes from victim to survivor. And now we're switching in from rescuer to what's the opposite of the rescuer, Emily?
The coach.
And what's the coach going to do?
The coach, instead of like as a rescuer, you're enabling. As a coach, you're saying, hey, maybe I could help come in and rescue, but I'm going to allow you to figure it out. And so for me, I think of asking questions and working together more so.
Absolutely. So let's stay in this line of, I'm making all the food, I'm spending all the time with the kids. What we can do is, one, we can start making our boundaries of what we're willing to do, not what we're asking someone else to do. I cannot, even my husband or wife, can I ask or expect them to do something that is without my control. What is in with my control is saying, this is what I'm willing to do, which then puts some of the weight onto the other side of the relationship of saying, well, you're not making me meals anymore. I understand. What I need to do is create a little bit more time for myself, and making all those meals are taking too much time. And so I need to make some time for myself. And so I understand now that you don't have your meals, you may feel frustrated. And I understand that. What I'd like to do is to be able to help show you how to be able to make meals. Or I'd like to send you these articles. I know you like steak, ground turkey, ground chicken. Here are the 3 easiest meals to make. Or now what I'm saying to the person is saying, here, let me coach you through it. And this will be hard. Because a coach, think about some of your best coaches, they're not there to solve it for you. It actually is going to be frustrating. And if you have a coach that's doing it for you, that's the wrong coach for you. The coach is a guide to say, hey, you can follow me. I know the path, but you're still going to have to climb this mountain. And it's going to be hard, and the weather's going to change and it's going to get rocky at times. And I'm going to be right here to encourage you. But you're not jumping on my back. I'm not putting you on a mule. You're going to walk here. I just know the way. And then the last part of the trauma triangle is persecutor to what?
The challenger. The challenger.
And what does the challenger do?
The challenger, to me, again, I look at, instead of going, you did this or this is the way it has to be, to, okay, actually, let's challenge that idea. Let's talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if you tend to be in a persecutor role, and we'll go back to the example we've been using. Instead of going, you're absolutely done here. I'm not helping. Go get your own food. Forget about it. I deserve my time. That's persecuting. You're not inviting somebody in. You're challenging somebody to join you. We're challenging somebody of going, and this is very similar in terms of the coach and the challenger role, but we're challenging somebody to be able to make the change. So there's setting boundaries in each three of these and understanding how to be able to set those boundaries when making that shift. So when you find yourself in a persecutor role, like, oh, wow, I'm laying the law here. Is that really what I do? Or do I want to challenge them to be better? Where I still have to hold my boundary that when they push back, I'm going to say, hey, here's still my boundary. And I'm challenging you to come meet me here. If you're not ready to meet me here, that's okay. But I'm going to challenge you here. And then I'm going to give you the tools that you need to meet me here as a coach. And both of us can be a survivor, meaning I'm going to take responsibility for how I feel, where I'm at in this situation, and not rely on you to be my answer to this situation. That doesn't mean that we're not in this together. What it means is that we're both taking responsibility to come closer to one another. Because if not, and one person's like, no, I'm not going to join that, the other person has to stand firm in where they're at. If they want to play victim and they want to be like, no, keep making my meals. I don't like that. This is BS. And see, this is, you're just like your mother, or they start bringing in all these other things that have nothing to do with the scenario and situation. That person's going to have to stand strong and go, I understand. First and foremost, I understand. I see where you're at. And be able to bring empathy and sympathy, even though you want to like rip their face off because you're like, listen, I've been making these meals for the last 3 years. I could nuke your face right now. But what we want to do is understand they feel scared, just like a kid getting their lollipop taken away. There was something that they enjoyed, and something's going to have to change. And when you become a challenger and you start taking off your mask, meaning, hey, I'm going to start acting more truer and in line with myself, which is honoring myself and helping myself. We start taking off a mask that's going to scare the other person, particularly if you've been doing this for a long time. And it's going to feel uncomfortable, you guys. And you're going to be like, I don't want to do this. This doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right because you're breaking out of a pattern. You're breaking out of a pattern. Breaking out is not something that feels like, oh, that's nice. Ever broken a bone? Broken a vase? It's abrasive, it's hard, it's painful. That's when you know you're growing or changing. If you make a little shift, you're like, okay, we're going to try this and it feels good. It feels good. For the both of us, it feels good. Nope. You've stayed right into that trauma loop. You've pivoted just a little bit, but are still staying in the same lane. And that can be a very challenging thing to break through from this. So, speaking of breaking free, let's give a little tools here in terms of breaking free from the trauma triangle. What are some tools that we can give when it comes to breaking free of the trauma triangle?
I mean, first and foremost, as Joel said, first it's recognizing where do you tend to fall. And you do oscillate between different parts of the triangle, even within like one sentence or with one like thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's recognizing where do you tend to fall, or in certain subjects or certain situations, think of those. Literally like journal about them, or just think of them and be like, oh, this is where I tend to fall, rather than just where others fall. But you, right? That's where we start, is that awareness for you.
Agreed. And how do we, people might be like, well, but how am I going to be aware of this? Some of the things that we teach, and one of the biggest things we teach in the proclivity method, guys, is recognizing how you feel in the body when a certain scenario comes up. If you feel tight, there is some type of trauma event that is coming up, or you're rubbing up against. We're like, oh gosh, I don't like that. And when we get to that point of like, oh, I don't like that, and I'm retracting, this is where we need to create some space. We need to breathe. We need to ask ourselves immediately, ooh, why am I getting upregulated here? And answer the question. To be able to stay curious in the times you feel most constricted is vital. Instead of, I don't like this, stop it. I need to go, why don't I like this? And why do I want this to stop? And if you can answer that question, and you don't have to necessarily answer it then. This is something that both Emily and I are practicing, is being able to go, if I was in that triangle as a rescuer and I felt the thing come up and I felt like I just needed to help out, I just needed to do it. Can I go back later and go, wait, let me change this into being in the coaching role? And let me journal how I would have responded as a coach there. Because too often we go, oh, I didn't do that. I recognize I was a rescuer, I was being a persecutor, or I was being a victim, and I should have said something, but I didn't say something. And we just start beating ourselves up. So now we start disempowering ourselves because we're making statements instead of being curious. So instead, if you recognize, I felt the trauma thing, Joel said I was going to get tight, I felt myself get tight, and then I responded like I always do. Come back, recognize, write it out, read it out, and then be curious. Be curious about this scenario, situation. Have you done this at all yet, Emily?
No, I've thought a lot about it, but I have not written it out. But it is extremely helpful to go back to certain situations and scenarios and think, okay, how would I react next time differently? Even if you don't have the answer in the moment. Because for me, that's a big challenge. And like the resistance I have is like, well, I
Mm-hmm.
don't always feel like I have the answer in the moment or know what to say perfectly in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, even just step one is like you said, slow down, take a deep breath. It's okay to say, hey, I need to think about this.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
either that, but then also like Joel said, journaling and writing it out will help you for the next time of like, this is what I want to try out saying next time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And let me ask you this, because this is going to be a good point for others, and we want to be, you guys, we're human too here. And even though we're coaches and we talk about this and we're part of it all the time, why haven't you done that? Like, why haven't you sat down and written it out?
Because it's uncomfortable. It's hard.
And if it's uncomfortable, the barrier is a little bit higher to be able to go into that space. How do you feel like you're going to be able to get to the point of being able to sit down and start reflecting on that?
For me, it's scheduling it in at a certain time of day. Because the only time I think for me right now, I'm like, well, I can do that when I put my son to bed. And I'm like, I really don't want to get upregulated right before bed.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's scheduling it in somewhere earlier in the day and dedicated space and time for that.
Okay, so this is actually a really good point. We're working this live right here, guys. This is fantastic. I love it when Emily gives me great examples. So I want you to key in on what Emily said. I don't want to get upregulated before bed. So mindset is a story we tell ourselves about ourselves. So currently, Emily, your mindset about writing something out is what?
Upregulating.
That's going to be upregulating. Let me ask you this. Why do you feel like it's going to be upregulating?
Because I go back to times where I think about what went wrong.
So what Emily's thinking about is the character that went through that scenario, and that character is an empowerment or disempowered position.
Disempowered.
So now she's imagining herself going back to the scenario as a disempowered individual. So the barrier now has risen even higher, even though she's thinking to herself, this is a good idea. I should do it. And this is why emotions and words are so important, you guys. But she feels constriction of actually sitting down and writing, because the story she's created in her head is that when she starts writing it out, she's going to get upregulated into it. Instead of the story of, I'm going to write this out to downregulate into this, because I'm actually going to write a story and a character of someone who is empowered, a completely different character, not one that is this current disempowered past version, but actually envisioning Emily herself as a sage version of her 10 years down the road, who made it through, who's done the therapy, who got the coaching, who worked it out. What would she say? How would she speak? What would she look like when she was talking about it? Would her legs be crossed? Would she be sitting up tall? Would she be speaking slowly, confidently, calmly? Just by pointing out that version of that Emily, is this down regulating the thought of going and doing this?
It does make it better. I still, my mind tends to go into little details of like, oh, well, that annoyed me, or I still have those little thoughts that pop up, but I hadn't looked at it in that way, and it does help.
Totally. And you've done story work before, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
What's on the opposite side of constriction?
Expansion. You do feel better after, so long as you, in my mind, I'm like, I just want to make sure I have the time to get there.
Completely. And you do have a great point, right? And so finding times in which you can reflect and be able to go through that, some individual time, you guys, which is really, really important to be able to find that individual time, not around your husband, not around your wife, not around your kids, not around your roommates, but being able to go reflect. And sometimes what that's going to be is being able to say, hey, I need 30 minutes once a week to be able to go journal and be by myself. And being able to go reflect in nature, to take a 45-minute walk. Because nothing changes until something changes, you guys. And we can give you all of this information. And you're like, oh my gosh, this makes tons of sense. But there's a difference between education and integration, from theory to thesis. And a lot of us are just taking in knowledge like you're doing right now. You're listening to us and you're going, man, this is so knowledgeable. Oh, this is so good. Maybe you're even taking notes. But what are you going to do after? Are you going to turn on another podcast? Are you going to go to the next episode? Are you going to want to continue to grab more and more education, but not actually integrate it? Because listen, guys, I could have 20 PhDs and be dead broke, living in my mom's basement, because I'm not actually integrating what I've learned. And that's the hardest thing, particularly when you're talking about trauma. Would you agree?
Yes, for sure. Because again, it goes back to like the uncomfortableness. It is hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Any suggestions other than what we've already talked about for moms, dads, people going through this?
For me, it is looking at my schedule, putting it in the schedule, taking time for yourself. And that alone is hard for me, right? I tend to prioritize other things. And
Because you term to prioritize other things or other people?
both.
Which one do you think that you prioritize more?
Other people.
Okay. I pushed Emily into that due to the fact that you heard her say, I'm a recovering people pleaser, and a recovering people pleaser will be a rescuer so often. And I pushed Emily into that because those moments are important, guys, to go, stop. Because sure, I can say other things that actually are only 5%, but 95% of the time I'm being ran by other people because I'm going, I I just want to cater to you. And what can I do for you? And how can I help you? And I don't want a confrontation. And so whatever you need and however you need it. And right now, perfect. Right now is a great time. When you're like, no, right now is the worst time. Like, no, I don't have time for this, but okay. Because if I say no, they might explode. That makes me feel really uncomfortable. I get this feeling in my belly or my chest or my head or my throat. And I don't want that feeling. So then I go into answering the call. Does that ring a bell, Emily?
Yeah, it's like you're in my brain.
That magic carpet ride. That magic carpet ride. Magic carpet ride. And so hopefully this is resonating with other people as well, Emily. And I appreciate you, as always, being somebody that is willing to go, okay, yeah, and being honest and being truthful. Okay.
So then I would say would start with sitting down with myself and going, hey, I deserve this time to get better, to feel better, to do better.
Agreed. And then there's the action. We can sit down and say, I deserve this time. What happens when Dansby starts wanting you or crying? Or what happens when Casey starts asking for your time?
Right. Well, then there's holding boundaries. And depending on the situation, if I'm by myself, of course, I'm going to tend to my child. But then it's going, hey, what do I do next then? How do I continue to knock this out within a reasonable time?
Sure.
But boundaries, asking for help.
Absolutely. Which is the next part of breaking free from the triangle, right? Is being able to set boundaries. Emily, how do you see boundaries? And is boundaries something that you struggle with, you're strong with, you're learning about? Tell us more.
Ooh. It depends the subject. So I'm great with boundaries. Well, I'm better with boundaries around my health and certain priorities of like for me, I have to move during the day. Like that is a priority, even if it's just a walk or even if it's just 5 minutes of air squats in my office. But when it comes like the example you used earlier, if someone asked me to do something in the moment and I feel the pressure of people pleasing, that's definitely harder for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's easy to set boundaries with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Harder to set boundaries with others.
Mm-hmm.
How come?
Because with me, I can control it more. With others, there's uncertainty.
Mm-hmm. And how they will respond if you set a boundary?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because when you set a boundary, what's the usual response?
Well, in my head, it's just like I'm causing pain in someone else or displeasure.
And I hope you guys are resonating with this because I'm sure there's other people out there going, whoa, thank you for sharing. Because, yeah, that's exactly how I feel. And then we go to the question, well, why does it matter if we're creating displeasure in someone else?
That is a good question.
And you don't have to answer that now, Emily, but see how it didn't take much to be able to ask her. That was two to three questions to get her down to the core. Why does it matter that we appease others? Why can't other people be upset? Why can't other people struggle? Why can't other people be angry and even angry at me? Why? And this is where we break out of the triangle. This is where we break out of our loops. Because now we can really start asking that question, really start diving into there and going like, man, why does that matter so much to me? What am I afraid of? And why do I take these actions? What about saying yes to everyone else makes me feel safe? And that's a question I want you guys to really allow to settle. What about doing this makes me feel safe? Not what about this do I run from or stay away from because, well, I don't want them to get angry with me and I don't want them to be mad. No, no, no. What makes me feel safe when I answer the call, when I move forward? Because here's the thing, guys, boundaries Listen up. Boundaries are to keep us in, not others out. I'm going to say that again. Boundaries are to keep us in, not others out. Here's a great example. On a ranch, if you have cattle and they're within the fence, okay, they're grazing in a certain area. If you've ever seen a barbed wire fence, it's 3 lines of barbed wire. And here's the thing, it's not high, and there's plenty of gaps in which a predator can get through, whether it's a wolf, a pack of coyotes, doesn't matter. But the thing is when the group is together, all the cattle's together, that's way too much meat. That's way too much cow butt that any predator wants to be getting in the middle of. Because if all of a sudden they start moving as a herd and you start having hundreds of cattle move a certain way, that predator's done for. They're just going to get trampled on. 1,000-pound cow butt on you. We're going to do that every time. But here's the problem, is that if a gate is left open, then the cows will start to roam. And they don't stay together, relatively together, but spaced out. And what ends up happening is now they're isolated. So a predator now can be like, oh, this is super easy pickings. You don't even see me coming. I'm hiding behind your buddy's butt. I'm going to snap you up. This is what happens to us when we try to set boundaries for others. Like, nope, you won't do that to me. And I'm going to control the external factor. You can't come here, do this, act this way, say these things. And when we do that, what happens when they just come into our boundary? I can't believe you did that. So here's a perfect example. You guys might be thinking, well, how do I set that boundary? What's a boundary I set for myself? With my mom and I, we don't get along with politics. Well, that's okay. Maybe we can relate with that with your family. And so when it came to setting my boundary with my mom, it was simply this. Mom, you're more than welcome to talk about politics. I will not engage. You're more than welcome to talk about politics. I will not engage. Meaning I'm going to remain silent and I'm not going to speak to it. That's me staying in my boundary, my gate. Because if all of a sudden she fetched me out, the wolf on the other side was like, ooh, politics, and you're a dummy for this and so on and so forth. And I go, oh yeah, it's game time. I'm going to come out of this gate. I'm now subjecting myself to being outside of my boundary. And there is a big difference between telling my mom, you don't get to talk about politics around me. Well, you can't control someone else, but you can control yourself. Okay. What is it about me that bothers me about politics? What do I need to do to address that? Is it really about the politics? Oh, it's not about the politics. It's that I don't like being spoken down to. Oh, this is something I need to address. And if I feel willing, I can invite my mom into understanding why being spoken down to makes me feel really unsafe. And I still can't expect her to change. Even when I say it, all I can do is invite her to me. That's being a boundary. And the hardest part about that, guys, is learning to stand up to yourself instead of for yourself. For yourself is don't talk to me that way. To yourself is coming up and going, hey, that really hurts my feelings, and I'm going to open myself up for vulnerability. And I'm going to express myself in a way to invite you in. And you may have never done that before. It might be really scary to you. But you're going to have to stand up to yourself and say, no, I'm not going to let this one slide. I'm going to stand up to myself and create a very safe, comforting place for myself to engage in conversation. Not, I'm going to stand up for myself, because standing up for myself is looking for the attacker. Standing up to yourself is going, how can I empower myself in this situation? Going from victim to survivor. Do you agree, Emily?
I agree. Well said.
Okay. I hit it out of the park when Emily has nothing to say. And the last part of breaking free from the triangle is what, Em?
Communication.
Tell me more. What does that mean?
Oh, I think of over communicating when you think like, oh no, that like for me and I tend to think in my head a lot, and then I'll say something, and whoever I'm talking to, whether it be Joel, my husband, or whoever, like what? I'm like, oh, I didn't communicate that. I was up in my head, and so over communicating for me is like like I have to think over communicate because that tends to be like baseline if I do that. So continuing to ask questions, continuing to communicate how I feel, what the boundary is.
Yes.
Yeah, all of it.
Love it. Love it. Here's the thing, guys. I'm going to give you a few key tips in terms of communications. One, if I'm in the trauma triangle, being able to recognize for me, am I communicating to myself? Oh, I'm being the victim here. And then staying curious. Okay, why am I the victim here? What have I been doing here to place myself in this position? What am I responsible for? Stand up to myself instead of for myself. If this is what's really bothering me, what boundaries do I need to set here? And being able to sit down, make time, and start writing out someone who is not in the survivor role, or excuse me, the victim role, but in the survivor role. How would the survivor speak? What boundaries would the survivor put down? Okay, I'm seeing myself as a different version of myself instead of this disempowered version of myself of being the victim, the rescuer, or the persecutor. Being able to get curious in that position will help you to start seeking out shared meaning. Shared meaning is the definition of communication. It's a shared meaning between a sender and receiver. So I'm going to give you guys an example because this happens quite often in relationships. Emily, and if you guys can't see, if you're not on YouTube or on video, I'm holding up a white water bottle. And so if I said to Emily, Emily, what color is this water bottle?
It's white.
And I may say, no, that's tan. And Emily and I could go back and forth arguing that it's white or tan, white or tan. Or I could get curious. Whoa, she sees it as white. Huh. What does it matter the color? Curious. Huh. Okay. Emily, what's the purpose of this bottle?
To drink water out of it.
I agree. I drink all of my water out of this bottle. What happened there, Emily?
We had a shared meaning
On what?
on what on what the purpose was.
Which is?
We used the water bottles for drinking water.
There we go. See what I just did there too, guys? I asked Emily, tell me more. Tell me what you heard me say. And she told me. And so now my job is, yes, that is exactly what I said. Thank you for hearing me. By having her parrot it back to me, it gave me the ability to go, that's exactly what I said. Now I feel justified. Now I feel heard. And she agrees to it, and we seal it with a yes. So then when I'm with Emily and I say, hey, will you pass me my water bottle? I'm thinking tan. She's thinking white. But she knows, since we got past it, oh, you're thirsty. There's water in that water bottle. And that is something we miss way too often. We get stuck in the weeds about the smallest things. And we don't allow ourselves to stand up to ourselves and say, whoa. We're not going down that path. You're not going to tell me that this bottle is a representation of who I am. You're such a dummy. How do you not see that? See, this is always how you are. You never recognize the difference between colors. And this is why our relationship is failing, is because did we just make this that personal that we're going to talk about the color of a bottle? It can go that route, particularly if somebody's in a persecutor role. They feel unsafe, so they're going to persecute to create safety for themselves. You're going to do it this way. It's going to be this color. This is how it's going to feel. And we've all been there, guys. I don't feel safe, so I'm going to tell you exactly how this is going to go down, and there's no changes if that's going to be made. Whoa. We do not have shared meaning. One is going to feel like a victim because they don't have an option. They're suppressed down, and there's nothing they can do other than be the rescuer. Come in and go, okay. Or feel like a victim and go, build resentment, anger, frustration, sadness. So I know we've thrown a lot at you, and this is a longer podcast than usual. When it comes to the triangle, the trauma triangle, Emily, what are some things you would make sure to drive home for you?
First and foremost, the awareness. And think of examples that this pops up in your life. And then journal and vision about it in terms of what we said of, okay, how would the survivor act? How would the challenger act instead? How would the coach be in the situation? And literally envision that, write it out of like, hey, this is how I want to respond next time. Because without those go-tos, we're going to feel stuck. Like I tend to feel like, oh, I don't know what to say. And again, that's okay in the moment. But if we can journal more about it or think through those situations in those other roles, it can make it a lot easier.
That's right. That's right. And to add on to that, that's beautiful, Emily. Being able to have a fallback, you guys, this is one of my fallbacks. I do it with kids, and I actually learned it from my nephew, is I don't like that. And you don't need any more explanation than that. I don't like that. I need time to think about it. I don't like that. I want you to know. I don't like that. It makes me feel unsafe. I'm not coming as a persecutor and saying you need to stop that. I don't like that. Stop it right now. I'm saying I don't like that. It makes me feel unsafe. I don't like that. It makes me feel uncomfortable. And maybe you haven't said that before. And I encourage you that the next time that happens and you feel yourself in one of those roles and you're trapped in it, say, I don't like that. Whether you're in the victim, the persecutor, or the rescuer role, I don't like that. You're asking me to once again put more time into our food. I don't like that. I want you to know. It makes me feel unseen and unheard. And that could be it. That could be it. Being able to fall back to those things and have those tools is important, you guys. So, this was a heavy one, huh?
Mm-hmm.
And what you guys didn't know is multiple times Emily had to mute her mic because she was going through a full spasm coughing attack. So if you're watching it on YouTube, you're like, what is happening to Emily? She's like wiping her tears and dying. And now you know now.
Yeah, I'm in the point of that cold where it sounds way worse and just the coughing at the end of those cold cycles.
You know what I want to say? It was just you ridding trauma.
Okay,
it's actually
that too.
a new trauma technique. We just
like
cough
that.
as hard as we can to get rid of the trauma.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe it'll work. Maybe not. You'll have to let us know.
Will do. You
guys, thank you so much for tuning in. If this was something that was helpful for you, please share it to somebody that needs to hear this. If you have more questions, reach out to us. Joel at proclivity.co or Emily at proclivity.co. We're here to be able to help. And if you're in a space where like, man, I'm ready to change my life, physically, mentally, emotionally, I want a life-changing experience, then reach out to us. Go to www.proclivity.co or click in the show notes to be able to book your connection call. You'll start with Emily and then you'll move to me. And if it's the right fit, we'll get you going. If it's not the right fit, we know a lot of professionals in the field to point you in the right direction. We are here to help. Emily, anything else?
Aside from leaving a 5-star review if you enjoy this and sharing it with a friend, we appreciate both. That helps us get the word out to more people.
All right. That's it, guys. Episode 142 in the books. Thank you once again for listening. And until next time.
Best day ever.
Best day ever. If you could only have one sweet, the rest of your life that isn't chocolate,
I was going to say chocolate.
what would it be? And you had to make it every time.
Oh, make it?
You had to make it every time. So what would be your favorite thing that you had to make every time?
Interesting. I was going to say like a cookie or a dang. If I had to make it every time, it'd probably be like yogurt and nut butter and berries, just because that's an easy go-to. Not my favorite though.
Nah, well, the yogurt with a little bit of vanilla protein, broken up chocolate pieces, which you
You
can't
said no
have.
chocolate.
That's where you put a little nut butter on there. There's a little honey on top. You can start getting
Ooh, actually,
what?
perhaps I love dates with nut butter. Any kind of nut butter, I don't care. But dates with nut butter.
Is
That's
that
good.
Dr. Allen told me that she prescribes that to women,
Pregnant women in
women.
their late stages to induce labor.
Huh?
It's
Did you do it?
I did do that. Yes. It was supposed to be like 6 dates a day, which is a ton of sugar. So I don't actually recommend it. Like I would do like 2 dates and then 2 dates in the morning and afternoon. I would do like 4 a day instead. Who knows if it helps? Worth a try. At that point, when you're 40 weeks pregnant, you're going to try almost anything.
You won't get that thing out.
Yeah.
That thing also known as your child.
Yes.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Well, you guys, let us know in the review, or send us a message, or Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
What would you do if you had to make it every time? For me, it would be cookies, chocolate chip cookies. No diggity, no doubt.
It's a lot of work though, compared to other things.
It is, and that's going to be a good thing.
True.
There's some resistance to it. It's going to take some time. It's going to be a whole experience. I'm going to be like, forget it. I'll just have some element and be bummed out about it. But be like, well, at least I didn't hammer down 85 grams of sugar.
Yeah, because when was the last time you actually made cookies?
I think it was Vietnam. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I just expect you and Gia and any other woman in my life or man, but I haven't gotten any men to cook me cookies, bake me cookies. Mm-hmm. So I just wait around.
Okay.
That's it.
That's it.
Anything else?
Nope. Have a great day.
Bye, guys.